Hello, I am Attila EGRI, and I will talk about retrocomputing and our future. So looking back to see forward. I will start with a personal story, and then I will talk about one particular old computer, the Commodore 64, which was the best-selling computer ever, and that will lead us into discussing the problems in the current computing landscape, and then, well, I will summarize it at the end. So it's very important. This is just a really introductory talk, and I'm just giving you sort of links to explore. So if I wanted to talk about this whole content and the full story, that would be a couple of days. I think it's a lot to talk about. So the personal story. Here is a question for you. What is this? It looks like a keyboard. But if you are old enough, then you recognize, this is one of those home computers, these early computers. Then this happens to be the Commodore 64. This was my first ever computer. And why is it interesting? Because you switch it on, and then you see this. Okay, this is just an image. The cursor is blinking, but it says ready, and it's waiting for your instructions. You have to give commands in a programming language, in a very simple one. It's called BASIC, but still, no icons, no email alert, and no browser. It's just the computer waiting for your instructions. So, this is probably one of the reasons why I became a software engineer at the end, because, well, I sort of experienced programming in the very beginning. So it's like, what can you do? It's like when you switch on this computer, well, you can write computer programs. Here's a very famous one. This is just a one-liner, and you actually see the complete program on the screen. And this produces this maze shape pattern. It's a random pattern, and this is written down in this beautiful book, which is actually freely available electronically on this website. And this is sort of a cultural study of this one-liner computer program. So this is one thing you could do with this computer. But even before I had access to any computers, I read books in the library. Well, they are really magical places, and wrote programs on paper. So I didn't have a computer. If you check that, the first book, in the corner it says no computer needed. Well, that's exactly was my situation. So again, these books were sort of generation-defining books, and they are freely available now. Of course, they tell you, the publisher will tell you that these are not useful for today's computers. But nevertheless, as you see, these are it's a very beautiful books. And this is like just 2 pages where the book explains how computers work. And you see, it's all nice and imaginary. It's these little robots carrying messages. This is how the data travels. So it's like you could imagine the inside of the computer, which looks very much like the printed circuit board, the upper part of the page. But then you could still visualize what's going on in the computer. So let's talk about this particular computer. It's the Commodore 64. So here is another book. Okay, that's the Too Much Fun. That's the sort of the first comprehensive history of this particular computer, and the author identified 5 stages, or it's like 5 distinct ways of thinking about this computer. And the first one, well, the original, the manufacturer, wanted to market this computer as a serious, ready for business computer when it was introduced in 1982. And then, of course, people figured out that it's like, wow, okay, this is very good for games. So it became a gaming platform. So, of course, I wrote programs, but I played games on it as well. So that was sort of the same thing as like just doing things with the computer. So that was the mid 80s, and then came this very interesting things, the demo scene, which would be just a long story just to explain what it was exactly. But you can imagine it's sort of like a very social. There are groups of programmers, hobbyists, working on impressive programs that which we would now call multimedia. You have animation, you have graphic design, and you have the sound together, and it's an artifact called a demo. And so that was one that's still alive. That didn't stop existing. So then there was this fourth stage, which was probably my when I got this computer in 88, maybe. I don't remember exactly. So when you have this cheap but aging computer which tries to keep up with the newer ones, the Amigas, the Macintoshes, and the bigger Atari computers, and then the fifth one, which we have now, is just, well, it's a simple historical device which has a very, very unique style, and then it still invites artists and hobbyists to play with it. So let's talk about the hardware specification, and it's gonna be interesting because if you own a laptop today, then it's probably 4,000 times faster than the Commodore 64. Okay, so what does that mean? That's a big number. Well, that means that if your computer can do something in a second, for the Commodore 64 that would take 67 minutes, so more than an hour. That's the speed difference. So if your computer finishes a task less than half a minute, that would take more than a day computation for the old computer. And then it's like, well, you have the screen resolution, and it's the highest resolution is 320 times 200, while today is sort of the very minimum for like a new and cheap computing device would be the 1080p as the standard. So it had 16 colors versus the today's standard, the true color specification, 16.7 million. Yeah, that's quite a big difference. And the memory is really, really shocking. It has a 64 kilobyte, which was huge back then. But if you think about it, it cannot hold Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, the text, because, well, if you check it on the Gutenberg library, it's 166 kilobyte plain text. Okay, so it's almost 3 times longer than the actual working memory of the Commodore 64, and there is no built-in storage. I mean, of course, you could use a tape drive or a separate floppy drive, which is like a full computer in itself. Interestingly, it has a 3-voice synthesizer, which became legendary. So now it's like the SID music. That's the name of the chip. It's a genre in computer music. But okay, so if you look at the hardware specification, then it's like you would ask that it's like, why would anyone use such a computer today? And believe it or not, in this year it came back to production. Okay, so it's they are being manufactured today. Of course, it's a bit newer hardware. I mean, it's exactly the same specification, but it's the same computer, and and people are ordering this. I ordered one, so I will have a new Commodore 64. So this is like, it's a bit of a riddle if you hear about is why would people pay money for this old computer? But okay, let's look back a little bit, and it's like, so how it evolved and how people actually figured out what the computer can do. And if you look at the first demo, which was sort of the commercial demo by Commodore itself, the company itself, in '82, this is like on the left looks like a bit it's not too serious graphics, and it's like, well, it looks nice, but if you compare it to like a demo, okay, this is just a screenshot. It's like you can imagine everything moves there, and it's like it's a totally different design language, and it's a lot more dynamic. So you can go and check these clips to see the difference. So, but it's like, let's give it a name. So retrocomputing is the use of old computers, both software and hardware. So that's the phenomenon. And then you might ask, it's like, why people do this? Is one question is that, well, yeah, it must be childhood nostalgia, just as I exhibited this. It's like, oh, I'm remembering my childhood. But it's like, that's not a full explanation, because I did many things in my childhood that I'm not doing now, and but this seems to be one that I'm still doing. And it's like, the other thing is that seeking challenges. So it's people like to work on hard problems, and if you want to do the same thing today on the old computer, what you can do today is with the contemporary computers, then it's like, it's a hard work. So it's like, eventually people figured how to connect the Commodore 64 to the internet, how to have a browser and things like that. Well, you can also explain it with historical interest. Just, this is already past, and it's sort of can be forgotten unless we go and think about it and study it a little bit. Another thing is that which be crucial in later, it's that the preference for freedom. So today's computer, for good reasons, because it's like, you want to be safe and secure on the internet. It's like you don't have the same access. You cannot just go into the memory and change the content there. This is exactly what you did when you programmed the computer, the Commodore 64, to play some games. Just change the memory content and suddenly a character appears on the screen. So that sort of freedom does not exist in computers anymore. So why am I talking about this? Okay, so why the relevance? It's like, it's not just my hobby, but we do have some problems nowadays. And one is that today's applications, the software is overly complex, and the only reason we don't see that how slow and inefficient they are, because we have the increasing hardware speed. Okay. And of course, this implies wasteful power usage as well. And then it's the most recent Gen AI that made it a lot worse, because now we need a huge amount of energy just to flatter the user, saying that it's like, oh, whatever is the prompt, it's such a great idea. And of course, retrocomputing does not solve these issues, but it can clarify them. It can make people conscious about that. It's like, hey, are we on the right track exactly? So these old computers could do a lot, and now it's like the new ones are struggling in a sense. And so there are other issues. For example, the supply chain. It's very, very complex to build a computer, and it's the whole process. The supply chain is subject to geopolitical issues, so all the trade wars and things like that. So one might think about it's like, hey, what happens when new computers will not be readily available? Will we know how to use the old tech? Okay, so it's like, if it's not the newest in the not the most user-friendly how to use that. And also, it's like by promoting AI tools and the mass layoffs in the tech sector, we tell people not to learn how computers work. They don't do software engineering because it's like, well, the AI will do that. And this could be an issue if you think about the education. So this is the one we can fix. So the question is, it's like, should we maintain fundamental knowledge about computing? And if yes, how? And of course, my answer is that yeah, it's like we want to remember how computers work. And it's good news is actually it is very simple. So it's like if you ask how do computers represent numbers, text, images, sound, and video, how do they process information? Well, the answer is always it's like, oh, very simple mathematical ideas. So that's a bit unfortunate that school mathematics does not focus on these, but there are readily available sources like this book I want to mention here that explains in very simple terms how computers work, and you have like a good overall image of that. So now it's like, of course, as talking about education and talking about AIU, we have the discrete mathematics course, which we call Mathematics for the Digital World. And we sort of took a standard discrete mathematics course and put it into the liberal arts context. So that means that we try to introduce ideas in their historical and conceptual context, highlight the effects on the society. And of course, we don't want to compromise the mathematical precision. So, but luckily the mathematics is quite simple and easy, but it's often mind-blowing or breathtaking. So with these goals, as a consequence, more and more retrocomputing content went into the course as it evolved over the years. When we talk about representing images, like how many bits you need per pixel, and then it's like how colorful you can get the image if you have memory constraints. So that was always there. But from next spring, the connection will be explicit, and students can experience the working with the old hardware. We will have the Commodore 64 in the classroom. So, to summarize my sort of very short introduction here is the following: that old computers work the same way as the current one, but they are understandable. The current ones are so complex and they so locked down, and well, proprietary parts in that, so no one actually knows how the whole things work exactly. But the old computers, one person can have a complete understanding of it, and that's probably why it is so attractive for many people. People like to understand things. That's the basic idea. And the other thing is that we learned that it takes a long time to master one particular computer. Okay, so it's like the Commodore 64 is like 43 years old, and still, people find new tricks, new ideas how to make it perform better and do more amazing things. And this is another very important thing, is that creativity flourishes under limiting constraints, it seems. And when you come to retrocomputing, you realize that you have these extremely limited devices, and people do like miraculous stuff with that. And then it's like, you would think that it's like, hey, and it's like, oh, what would those people, if you take today's computers, when everything is so easy and it's like so readily available, and that's like, okay, you don't see the same level of creativity. So there is a bit of a paradox here, which would be interesting to research this, how creativity actually happens. But okay, that's just a short introduction. But I think we can agree that we still need creative people who understand what is going on, especially with these computers. So conclusion is, play with old computers. And of course, if you can, come to MAT 240, I think. mathematics for the digital world. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your attention.